Hello, and welcome to Lesson 9 of Social Studies with Mr. Appel. Today we're going to be taking a closer look at the United States Constitution. A constitution is a document that makes up the laws and sets out how a government will work for a country. Most countries in the world have a constitution or a collection of laws that they use like a constitution. So, like the United Kingdom and Israel, as two examples, they don't have an official constitution, but they have laws that they have to follow. We have a constitution, and today we're going to see what exactly is in the Constitution. The first part is the preamble. The preamble is sort of the introductory statement. It starts with "We the people of the United States" in order to form a more perfect union. That's the preamble. It's explaining why they're making this Constitution in the first place. Then there are 7 articles. And that's what we're going to look at today. The 7 articles. And each article is broken down into sections. The Constitution was created in 1787. It took about 4 months of negotiating, writing, editing, arguing amongst the delegates who were there in Philadelphia. And amongst the delegates, the 2 most famous perhaps were Alexander Hamilton and James Madison. They were both Federalists, meaning they wanted a strong federal government. Other people who were there: Benjamin Franklin, of course George Washington, Roger Sherman, many famous politicians and lawyers. The first 3 articles deal with the federal government. So, Article 1 creates the legislative branch. Legislative means lawmaking. Legis, like the word legal. So they make laws. Legislative. And we already discussed this, but a lot of this is review. When they were creating the legislative branch, they created Congress. And there was a big disagreement, as we talked about, between the states with large populations, like Virginia, and the states with the small populations, like Connecticut, Rhode Island, Delaware, as to how many seats each state would get. So the compromise was the House of Representatives would be based on population. The more people that live in your state, the more representatives you'll get. The Senate, every state would be equal. And that's the way it still is to this day. And we talked about that yesterday, or 2 days ago, when we talked about the census. The census is where they collect the data to figure out how many people live in each state. And that's also in Article 1. Article 2 is the executive branch. And the executive branch is the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, and then the Cabinet, which is in charge of all the departments of the United States. The departments include Treasury, State, Commerce, Defense, Transportation, Labor, Homeland Security. There are 15 different departments. That's all under the aegis of the executive branch. AEGIS, aegis. And the 3rd article outlines the judicial branch. The judicial branch is all the courts, with the most important court being the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has only 9 members. The 9 members are picked by a president only when one of the members has either died or resigned or been removed. And whoever is picked by the president must be approved by the Senate. And sometimes it can be very heated, as we saw the last time when President Trump picked Brett Kavanaugh to be on the Supreme Court. The Senate almost rejected him, but they didn't. In fact, no Supreme Court judge has been rejected by the Senate since 1987. So usually the Senate will approve. So the first three articles sets up the government. Article 4 discusses what powers the individual states will have. Article 5 says about the amendment process. The amendment process. An amendment is an addition or a change that you add into a document. They knew that the Constitution was not perfect and that they would probably have to change it later on or add things. So they set up a process whereby you could amend the Constitution. But amending the Constitution, since it's so serious, it is almost impossible to do, but not impossible. In order to amend the Constitution, 3 things need to happen. Number 1, 2/3 of the House of Reps has to vote for this amendment. 2/3 of the entire House of Reps. Well, there's 435, not back then, but there is now. So you need to get 290 out of 435 votes. If that happens, you need to get 2/3 of the Senate. And by the way, you could start with the Senate first and then go to the House. And you need to get 2/3 of the Senate, which is 67 or more. If you get these 2 things, is it an amendment? Is it officially into the Constitution? No. There's still one more step. To give it to the president? No. That's what you do for a normal bill, like they did last week with the stimulus. No. To get an amendment, you have to give it to all 50 state governments, because every state has its own legislative branch. Every legislative branch gets to see the amendment, and you have to get 75% of the states, which means 38 or more states. So you have to get 3 things, just 3 things have to happen in order to get an amendment. So it's a very difficult process, but it has happened. We have 27 amendments. Article 6 talks about debts, how the government pays its debts, money it owes. Supremacy clause that we talked about, that the federal government is supreme over the state governments. And the oaths. Oaths are the things that people have to say when they get sworn in, like the president has to take the oath. And then the last article, Article 7, is about the ratification process. Ratification means approval. So they were saying, how are we going to approve this Constitution? And the approval process was you had to give it to all the states, and you had to get 9 out of 13 states. And that happened in 1788. So that is the Constitution. And like I said, we've added in amendments over the years. And the first 10 amendments all came at the same time, called the Bill of Rights. And I listed 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 8. These are the most important ones, in my opinion. And you can look at them there. The First Amendment is the freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. Fourth Amendment is no unreasonable search and seizure. Fifth Amendment, no double jeopardy, right to due process, right to remain silent. You don't have to incriminate yourself. Right, Amendment 6, the right to a trial, speedy trial, and a right to a lawyer. Number 8 is no cruel and unusual punishment. So all those are part of the Bill of Rights. And then through the years, there's been more and more amendments. And I listed some of them. 13, 14, and 15 all came right after the Civil War. 19 is the right of women to vote. 22 is presidents can only be elected twice. 23, Washington, D.C. residents are finally allowed to vote for president. 24, no taxing people to vote. 25, the rules about who takes over if the president dies. And 26, the voting age is lowered from 21 to 18. So that is the Constitution in a nutshell. There's so much more to learn, of course. And for your assignment, you are going to select one part of the Constitution that you want to learn more about. It could be one of the articles. It could be one of the amendments. It's up to you. And if you have any questions or comments, post them below, and we'll see you on the website. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Cover your cough. If you are going to go out, I think they're recommending now, if you have some sort of face cloth or mask or anything, put it on. And take care.